So this session is intended to provide you with essential information about the major and answer any questions that you might have. With that in mind, please ask questions using the Q&A function, and our team will endeavour to answer these as we go. We'll address any unanswered questions towards the end of the session, when there should also be time for some further questions. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have. So let's begin by explaining the purpose of the major. First, it's well understood that the legal profession and the practice of law is changing, including in some very fundamental ways. And technology is one of the main drivers of these changes. At UTS, we've decided to address the challenges of the changing nature of the legal profession, which of course are also challenges for legal education, by introducing the Legal Futures and Technology major. As I've said, it's the first of its kind in Australia, and so far we're the only law school to offer this. In our view, this places us at the forefront of legal education. The major was launched in 2018 after significant research and consultation with the legal profession, and it's designed to equip students with the skills necessary for navigating technological change and for a future in the legal profession. And since 2018, the major has grown and developed, with an increasing number of students choosing to take advantage of this opportunity. The major is both academically rigorous and practically oriented, including 2 capstone subjects, coursework subjects, and the opportunity to undertake a legal internship with a legal futures and technology focus. The subjects in the major are delivered by experts in technology law, including intellectual property law, cybersecurity, privacy law, and biomedical law, all of whom have active research interests in areas relating to technology and the law. For example, with Genevieve Wilkinson, who teaches Capstone 1 and who you'll hear from soon, and Ivana Wright, who's responsible for teaching disruptive technologies and the law, we've recently completed a major project investigating the regulation of consumer Internet of Things devices. Other members of the teaching faculty have active research projects involving the regulation of digital platforms, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence systems, and biomedical law. And next year, the teaching team will be joined by Chris Wilson, an expert in cybersecurity, cybercrime, and First Nations law, who next semester will be responsible for Capstone 1. So what's involved with the major? Well, the structure of the major is actually quite simple. It consists of 5 subjects totaling 30 credit points. So you need to make sure, as Maxine will remind you, that you have 30 credit points available to enrol in the major. The major includes 2 compulsory capstone subjects, Capstone 1 and Capstone 2, which you'll hear more about soon, and which are designed to bring together much of what you've learnt during your law degree and expand on it with a technology law focus. As your 3rd subject, you have a choice between an elective, disruptive technologies in the law, and a local internship, which in 2023 will include the possibility of participating in a legal tech clinic. And I'll say something more about that soon. It's usual, and we think advisable, for students to complete the disruptive technologies elective before studying Capstone 1, as what you learn in the elective will help you with the capstone subject. And finally, you must choose 2 electives from a range of relevant technology law electives, which vary from year to year, but include subjects such as intellectual property law, media law, workplace health and safety, and regulating technologies. So with that introduction, I'll now hand you over to Maxine Evers, who will explain the eligibility requirements for the major, both for LLB students and for honours students.
Thanks
Maxine,
so
over
much.
to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. So as David has just said, please remember in the planning of your subjects and your progression to leave yourself 30 credit points in either your combined undergraduate degree or your 4-year LLB. So the major can commence in your penultimate or second last year, and it's available to all undergraduate law students. Applying is a little bit different than your usual way of enrolling in the subjects of your choice. So as you can see on the slide, you must lodge an e-request to assess whether you are eligible. And in terms of eligibility, it's not about a grade point average or about a WAM. It's to ensure that you do have space in your study. It's also important to think about, as you're planning your progression, that the major runs really in autumn and spring in that order. So Capstone 1, that you'll hear more about later, is offered in autumn. Capstone 2 is offered in spring. So you've got to make sure that you've done Capstone 1 before Capstone 2. So just think about that. The other point to consider, if you are eligible for and thinking about undertaking honours, as you know, as an undergraduate student, to fulfill the honours requirement of your degree, you need to undertake 2 subjects. The first one is a prerequisite, research methodology, and the second one is your thesis. So you may want to think about doing a research methodology in autumn and your thesis in spring, because you must do research methodology before you undertake your thesis. Thank you, David. Again, I know we are kind of harping on this 30 credit points, but particularly students that are undertaking a double degree, a combined degree here at UTS, we know that your electives are very precious and you do need to plan ahead. Students undertaking the 4-year LLB have a little bit more flexibility because you have really your final year of electives, both law and non-law electives. But importantly, keep your 30 credit points for the major. And as David's already indicated, compulsory subjects are, because they really are the core of the major, Capstone 1 offered in autumn, Capstone 2 offered in spring. And then you have a choice between 2 subjects, as you can see there on the slide, disruptive technologies and the law, or a local internship in technology. I'll just give you a little bit of background as to why we have put these 2 subjects together as a choice. Whilst there's a range of electives that you can undertake, as David's mentioned, in the next slide we'll go into more detail about, and really the core, as I've said, at Capstone 1 and Capstone 2, a focus on technology is critical to the major. And so I was involved in the design of the major in 2018 with experts, as David said, that research in this area, the practice in this area, including those in private practice, those in startups, those at the bar, and those working in corporations. And we believe that it's really important for you to have that focus. So you've got a choice. If there's a local internship in legal tech that you're interested in, and we'll hear a little bit more about that further on, then you can think about that if you have the opportunity and the availability to undertake an internship. And there's more information, of course, on the website about our internship projects, or subjects. So local internship is a general internship subject available to undergrad students. If you're undertaking the legal tech major, you need to do your internship in that area, and you do have some choices there. Or if you're not able to undertake an internship, or you would rather focus on a subject, then disruptive technologies and the law is your subject. So one of either of those. And then your third decision in undertaking the major is which electives you will choose. So you have 2 electives to choose from, and each of these electives have a component on technology. So the subjects have been developed in their expert area, their subject expertise, but they also have a focus on technology. So we might move to the next slide, please, David. It has some examples here of those subjects. So here are the subjects that we currently offer in relation to the legal tech major, and remembering that you'll have 2 electives from this list. I really recommend that you have a look at the handbook each year, and particularly you might be in first or second year and you're not coming into the major for a couple of years. Go to the handbook, and that sets out the electives that you can choose from. So we do add new electives as they come in, as they are reviewed. So you have a fair bit of choice there, a lot of choice there. And you can see in those list of subjects, research methodology and research thesis. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that for honours students. So next slide. Thank you, David. So you are able to undertake honours and undertake the major. But again, it all comes down to planning. And it is a great combination to do the major and to do your thesis in an area of technology and innovation. It's certainly something that we hear in the faculty from employers around the knowledge and the skills and the application of knowledge and skills, and what you can demonstrate if you have undertaken the major and also undertaken a thesis in that area. So instead of general electives in the major that you just saw on the previous slide, if you're thinking of undertaking honours, whether you're a 4-year LLB student or a 5-year full-time combined law student, instead of those electives, you undertake the research methodology and then the research thesis. Now, a little bit of advice I would give to you, if this is what you're thinking about, I would encourage you to speak to an academic that you would like to supervise you fairly early on in your thinking around their availability. For example, they might be going on study leave, they might be on long service leave. So plan that as much as you can, as early as you can. And the other person that I'd recommend you speak to if you're not sure about your study plan is our Director of Students. So Colin Hawes, Associate Professor Colin Hawes, is our current Director of Students, and Associate Professor Harry Hobbs will be our Director of Students from next year. So I think if you speak with them, if you're not sure, then they can have a look at your transcript and help you plan out your subjects. As I said a little bit earlier, most students will do the methodology, research methodology in autumn, and then do their thesis in spring. You could, however, do your methodology in the previous spring, so in your penultimate year, and then do your thesis in the autumn or spring of your final year. But it is really ensuring that that capstone 1 is in autumn and that capstone 2 is in spring, because they're not offered in any other session. So you can't do capstone 1 in spring, etc. So just a bit of careful planning, but I would again recommend you to have a look at the handbook because it does set it out very clearly. I think that's all from me. Thank you, David.
Thanks so much, Maxine. And I certainly know that there are quite a few students in Capstone 2 that have been doing an honours thesis on a technology law related subject. So it's a great opportunity to specialise in a particular area.
Thanks, David.
Okay, well, I want to say now a little bit more about the background to the major. And if we look at this slide, a variety of technologies, including but not limited to artificial intelligence and data analytics, are changing the business of law. These technologies include e-discovery, automated document analysis and automated drafting, expert systems, predictive systems, and collaboration tools. Other technologies, such as blockchain, are not yet having a major impact on the profession, but they may do so in the future. These developments give rise to both challenges and opportunities, including how to harness the potential of innovative new technologies while maintaining professional ethical standards. The ongoing impact of technologies on the legal profession means that it's no longer optional to have a degree of technological literacy. It's essential. But it also means that there are significant new opportunities in areas such as knowledge management, legal operations, data analytics and cybersecurity for students with the relevant skills. Now, as part of your legal studies, you'll be aware, at least to a degree, of the significant and ongoing changes occurring in the legal profession. And as a law school, we must, of course, equip you with the skills demanded by a changing profession. There are many reasons for these changes, not least of which is the increasing development and deployment of legal tech. But the main reason is really the need for law firms to deliver value to clients. While in the past it may have been sufficient for lawyers to know the law and for law graduates to know the law, in recent years, clients have been demanding more value for money. So clients expect not only traditional legal skills, but are demanding more than this. And this requires new skills, such as skills in legal project management and teamwork, but also skills in using technology to provide more value to clients. In addition, in a technology-rich society such as ours, lawyers play a key role in the regulation and management of technologies and in the ethical uses of technologies. It's therefore important for you to be aware of the main regulatory regimes and of the legal and ethical issues associated with use of new technologies, such as AI, Internet of Things devices, and blockchain. And finally, delivering legal services is increasingly seen as part of a broader set of activities involving strategic planning, financial management, project management, and technology portfolio investment. What's known as legal operations increasingly requires multidisciplinary teams that are able to address complex legal and business problems. So employers or potential employers are interested in your ability to work in teams, and subjects offered in the major provide you with the opportunity to do this, but also an ability to work alongside others with different skill sets. So we'll now have a closer look at some of the subjects that form part of the major, and I'll hand you over to Genevieve Wilkinson, who will introduce you to the first capstone subject, Technology, Law, Policy and Ethics. Over to you, Genevieve.
Excellent. Thanks, David. And that's a fantastic introduction. And I think that the role of legal professionals is something that we look at fairly closely in this first capstone subject, technology, law, policy and ethics, when we think about the way that legal technology challenges us, and as lawyers, the way that we need to address it. And one of the things that is, I think students really enjoy about this subject is it's a capstone subject. And so that is important in a number of ways. And so one way is that it draws together all of, almost all. We do some exercises to show how technology can engage all of the core subjects, but it sort of focuses, focuses on a range of different areas of law that you've studied and brings them together, ranging from criminal law, contract law, administrative law, international law, commercial law, and particularly ethics, law and justice. So we go back to ethics in this capstone subject, and we really think about some of the demanding ethical issues that we're confronted by in technology. And there's definitely one of the ways that we do that is that we take both a domestic and international perspective. And so students really enjoy the opportunity to explore the relevance of the Sustainable Development Goals to technology law. And that's something that we look at throughout semester, but we also look at in one of the assessment tasks, which is an article for the conversation, where students consider areas of technology and how they engage Sustainable Development Goals. We also, in this capstone subject, we think a lot about legal practice skills. So what skills towards the end of your degree that you'll be needing moving into practice. And so David's already mentioned group work, and that is a really important part of semester. We have a quite high class participation mark, and we expect our students to work in groups, to move around, to learn from each other. And we also facilitate that in other forms of assessment. So towards the end of semester, we have a lightning talk fair, Lightning talks are ways that people often sort of convey information about new technology and new legal technology. And so we ask students to give 2-minute talks about 2-minute lightning talks, and then as part of the lightning talk fair, we do it online. You then engage with each other and ask each other questions and respond. And there's a real sort of research conversation, but it's within the sort of within the context of legal technology and the way that people do engage with each other. And similarly, the conversation is a great way that people sort of communicate cutting edge information about legal tech. And I think that, you know, that sort of cutting edge technology influences the different things that we study. So this year, we have always studied drones, and we've always studied lethal autonomous weapons in this subject. But this year it was particularly relevant when we were contemplating what was going on in the Ukraine. And so part of the in-class participation activities, students were broken into different teams and they prepared submissions. Some of them were representing the Ukraine, some of them were representing Russia, some were representing the Red Cross, and giving different perspectives on a problem question which involved the use of lethal autonomous weapons. David's already mentioned the fact that we have a great deal of research-inspired teaching throughout the major. And so we were able to, when we were considering the policy aspects of technology law, because David and Ivana and I were working on a policy report about the Internet of Things and the consumer privacy and cybersecurity issues associated with that, we actually basically had a living sort of policy example where we talked about the way that the research we were undertaking was then being communicated in round tables, and the different sort of government and sort of civil society players who were part of that sort of consultation process, and how that's a means for influencing policy. We also have a lot of guest lecturers in this subject to try and recognise that there are a lot of different players in this particular area. So we speak to people from legal tech. We speak to representatives from non-government organisations, and about how legal technology and ethics intersect for them. And so we also, we had industry professor Ed Santo, who's an expert on facial recognition technology at our Human Technology Institute at UTS, come and speak to us this year. So we try and make it something that really is something that is cutting edge, this, you know, this subject, but also disruptive tech and capstone too, so that you really get to learn about technology law as it is at the moment, and the policy and ethics dimensions of that. And as part of a capstone subject, I think that students do really appreciate the emphasis on some of the skills that they will be expected to have when they move into practice. And it's not just group work, it's skills in comparative learning. You know, when you move into legal practice, you are learning from many other people that you work with. And so having that sort of comparative learning sort of focus is really useful. I've also I think it's important to recognise that there are a lot of job opportunities in this area. So I am often asked for recommendations of students who might be interested in initially in paralegal opportunities, in legal tech, but also in legal tech careers. And so it's definitely something that I think it's really important to think about, that legal technology is a growing field of employment. It's also, having legal technology interests and skills is something that a diverse range of employers are interested in. So NGOs, for example, can see the benefits of being sort of knowledgeable in legal technology and the benefits that that can add to their work. And so it's not just something that the big law firms are interested in. It's really developing skills that can be quite useful throughout your career. So David, I will hand back to you, but I am happy to answer questions at the end.
Great. Thanks so much, Genevieve. And I just reiterate what Genevieve has just said, that we're regularly approached by people in practice and in other areas with opportunities for students that are about to graduate in technology and technology law areas. So I'll say a little bit now about the second of the capstone subjects, which I'm responsible for, which is the applied project in law, innovation and technology. And this subject really is unlike anything else that you will have studied in your undergraduate law degree. It's both challenging and rewarding in equal measure. So it's a very practically oriented subject in which students use legal project management skills to solve real-world technology law problems in innovative ways. And in this subject, students work in teams of 4 or 5 to solve problems for clients and work in a way in which it's different from other subjects, is that you work on your problems over the full semester. And the assessment for the subject is, first of all, developing a project plan. So after learning project management skills, the first stage is for your team to develop a project plan. And then towards the end of the semester, there's presentation of solutions to your clients. And in place of clients, what we have is a panel of experts in technology law, including partners of law firms, and each team must present their innovative solutions to these relatively complex problems that the team has been working in over the semester. And the final part of the assessment is a final research report that's produced by the research teams, which makes recommendations to the clients. Throughout the semester, students learn skills in legal project management, in researching technology law, and in teamwork. And another important part of the subject is introducing students to legal technologies and how technology is currently changing the practice of law. And as with Genevieve's subject, we have a range of guest lecturers, those that are at the cutting edge of the implementation of legal technology, including people from startups, but also representatives from some of the major law firms, explaining how technology is changing their practice. As an example of the sorts of projects students work on, this year students have been working on technology law projects involving the telco sector, the energy sector, and sports data, with an emphasis on data regulation and, of course, this year on cybersecurity issues. Past years have involved projects in areas such as fintech, smart cities, and agri-tech. So the particular issues change from year to year, but they're always quite detailed problems that students will work on. And one of the great challenges is, which replicates in many ways the challenges faced in practice, is to develop the scope of the project, to work out what things are feasible to do within the scope of a semester for a team to do within the scope of the semester, and then communicate those things effectively to clients. So that's, and as Genevieve said, I'm happy to take questions about the second of the capstone subjects at the end of this session. I want to now say something about the other, what we might call the quasi-compulsory elective. Remember, this is the elective that you must do if you don't do the local internship, which is disruptive technologies and the law, which is taught by our colleague, Ivana Wright. As I've mentioned, students enrolled in the major have the option of either doing this or the local internship. Now, this subject looks at technologies, and we know that there are a range of transformative technologies: artificial intelligence, big data, the Internet of Things, cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, fintech, and legal tech, and they all pose fundamental challenges for law and regulation. As the recent Optus and Medibank hacks and the current review of the Privacy Act illustrate, the law often lags behind technologies. The challenges of disruptive technologies mean that technology lawyers must not only be problem solvers, but must be advanced problem solvers, including in advising clients about the application of laws that are not necessarily fit for purpose, and also in contributing to policy debates about how existing laws can adapt to new technologies. So this subject, Disruptive Technologies in the Law, equips students with the essential tools needed to understand how existing laws apply to new and emerging technologies and to contribute to debates about law reform. This includes providing the necessary foundation in areas of the law such as intellectual property law and data privacy law, so as students can understand how these laws apply and sometimes fail to adequately apply to new and emerging technologies. And given that the subject matter, given the subject matter of this subject, the material covered in the subject varies from year to year in response to topical issues. So that's the other, what I call the quasi-compulsory elective. And if you don't do the elective, then there is the option of doing the local internship. So the internship provides students with the opportunity to obtain practical legal experience and to develop professional skills through work with a local host organisation. And it involves participation in an internship for 11 weeks during the teaching session and will involve placement at a legal service provider. And to participate in the major, there must be a technology focus of the service provider. So you'll see there that the current tech internships include LawPath and Westpac. And then in autumn 2023, the internship will include for a second time the opportunity for 8 students to participate in the Law Tech Clinic, which is delivered by BOTL, a group of young lawyers in partnership with Lander and Rogers. So you'll see there, it's hosted by the Lander and Rogers Legal Tech Hub. The clinic includes seminars on legal tech, as well as working in a team over the semester on a law tech project under the supervision of a partner at Lander and Rogers. And also I'm involved with coordinating the clinic. And this will usually involve developing a practical solution, such as a chatbot or an app. We ran it for the first time in the autumn session this year, and I can assure you that all of the students that participated in the clinic found it a very rewarding experience. So the feedback that we've received from students completing the major has been uniformly positive. And as I said earlier, enrolments have been growing each year. As I also said, we usually have a past student to come and talk to you about their experience in the major and how that has influenced their subsequent career. And so we'd organised for Ethan, who was a staff student in the first intake in the major, to talk today, but unfortunately he's become ill. But Ethan has very generously agreed to provide some feedback to you or some answer any of your questions via LinkedIn. And this slide has his LinkedIn address if you'd like to take that down. Okay, so we've gone through the explanation of the major fairly efficiently today. And that means that we have some time for some more Q&A. And given the size of those of the group that we've got today, I think it's perfectly fine if. So I'm not sure. Can students ask questions, or they must be able to ask questions only in Q&A?
It's preferred that they ask it in Q&A, but
okay.
If anyone has a question, you can raise your hand if you absolutely want to talk. But please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section.
So we've got a good amount of time. So please, if you've got questions, if you've got a burning question, it's very likely that other students will also have a similar question. So there's no question that is silly. So please feel free to put your questions in Q&A. And as Sanal has said, if you really do want to put your hand up, we might be able to unmute you.
David, there's one very good question that I'm happy to answer that a student has asked, and I'm sure there are other students, as you said. So the question is, when should I submit my e-request to have my study assessed and then to have you enrolled in the major? So you should submit that e-request the semester before you are intending to commence the major. And that will allow the student admin time to see your transcript. Your transcript will be obviously up to date, including the subjects that you are enrolled in the semester that you submitted the request, ready to commence the next session. So if you're a first or a second year student and you're not able to do the major for another 2 years, it's too early. But if you are thinking about if you're planning to do the major next year, then you should be putting your e-request in now. And again, if you're thinking, I'm not quite sure if I've got space or how I can do this with Capstone 1, Capstone 2, and those honours students, research methodology and your research thesis, then I would recommend that you make a time with the Director of Students, and they'll go through your transcript with you to give you some further advice so you know when the timing is right. I mean, as many of you would know from using e-requests in the past, particularly during the busy times of session, it can take a while to get a response. So as early as possible in your final semester pre-commencing the major is the time to submit that e-request. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Maxine. We've got a great question from Q&A from Gianluca, who says, if I want to be an intellectual property lawyer, but also want to do the major, where I can only choose 2 electives, and just to emphasise the fact that you've only got 2 electives, and that's and as Maxine says, it's very important for you to plan ahead to deal with that. So the question is there an IP subject that you think covers the broadest or most important area of IP? So Genevieve and I are both IP lawyers, and IP lawyers may have different views about these things. So there are 2 main intellectual property subjects that are offered as part of the electives. So the subject that I've been responsible for is copyright and designs, and the other subject is patent and trademark law. So there's a good reason why it's divided up in that way. I, of course, have very strong feelings in favour of copyright law, which I think is a wonderful elective and always very interesting. But I must be neutral about this. Because intellectual property law is absolutely essential for the way in which society deals with technology and for promoting innovation in technology and innovative uses of technology, and raises a whole host of incredibly interesting and important issues. So I can't advise one way or the other. Both are good. Because you have 2 electives, it is, I think, possible to do both IP subjects, which are offered in different semesters. So usually patents and trademark law will be offered in the autumn semester and copyright and designs in the spring semester. So I can only say that both subjects are interesting, vital, important, and I can recommend both of them, highly recommend both of them, taught by experts, national experts in the area. Genevieve, is there anything that you'd like to add on that question, that interesting question?
I think I'm going to be a bit less neutral. So I'm speaking now as a practitioner rather than as someone who teaches design law and researches in trademark law. As an IP barrister, I think that you do probably see more work, more volume of work in patents and trademarks. And so if you have a very sort of commercial focus in that respect, that would be something to think about. However, I don't have, as someone who has also worked in IP litigation at major national law firms and internationally, I think that there would be definitely recognition of the value and importance of studying copyright and designs, as well as trademarks and patents, when you are sort of making, and, you know, sort of if you were going through employment rounds. And so it would be something that, had you studied one, then you would be able to sort of catch up on the job, so to speak, with the other. But I think that's just, you know, if we had to sort of make a call in terms of the volume of work, I would say that patents and trademarks is probably more volume. So even though the teaching is definitely fantastic in copyright and designs, and personally, I find it an incredibly interesting, two incredibly interesting areas of law.
I think that's absolutely right, Genevieve. No doubt it is that there's, and you see that there's more litigation in the trademark and patent area as well, which doesn't mean that there isn't work and work opportunities available for those that decide to specialise in copyright.
David, could I just come in here as not a subject matter expert, as Genevieve and you are, but also if you are thinking or eligible to do honours, you can also do your thesis in IP and technology. So for those students that are thinking about honours, and there's a particular area, obviously, when you're thinking about your thesis, you've got the area that you want to specialise in, then that's another option to deepen and expand your knowledge. Thanks, David.
Well, I'll also add that usually with the second and the capstone subject, there'll be some, because of the importance of IP to technology and innovation, there will often be some component of the problem question which raises some intellectual property issues.
And it's definitely something, because it is my sort of one of my fields of expertise, that we do sort of talk about, you know, sort of in an applied way in tech law policy and ethics. So you do get some exposure to IP issues in that subject too.
Okay, so great question. We still have a little bit more time for more questions. Any final questions? If not, I think we've answered all of the questions. And I'd just like to end by saying that, as I said before, the major is, oh, we've got some questions coming in.
Yes, David, I'm happy to answer, or perhaps we could all answer the internship question. So the slide that mentioned the internships, they were just a sample of internships. I will ask Sanal, who's assisting us in the webinar, to include in the link those internships, the full list of our current local internships that relate to technology, so that you'll know which choices you have. But the three that we put up, and particularly the one with Bottle and Landry and Rogers, it's a new internship. So that's why we put those kind of, I suppose, larger ones where some of our students have gone to. And I don't know if you wanted to add.
Yeah, I should have made that clear. They were examples only of the current legal tech internships. So OSLI certainly is on the list, as is LawPath. So we'll clarify that for you.
Yeah, thanks, David.
And OSLI as well. Members of OSLI do teach into the Capstone 2 subject.
Okay. Thank you, David. And the third question relates to which kind of e-request. It's the usual e-request. So we've got the general UTS e-request. Just Google UTS e-requests that you would put in to make any changes to your study plan and your progression. And that goes straight to our student admin unit, who will then carry out the assessment. Thanks, David.
Okay, all right. And we're very happy to take further questions as well. So as I was saying, really, this is a great opportunity for you. As Genevieve mentioned earlier on, we are regularly receiving requests from people in practice looking for graduates with expertise in these areas. These areas are growing, expanding. The subjects, as I said, are both rigorous but practically oriented, interesting subjects, and I highly recommend that you're obviously considering doing this by attending this information session, but I highly recommend it to you. Okay. Right. So, and as I said previously, Ethan is happy for you to address any questions to him using that LinkedIn link there.
I think there's one more question, David.
Great. All right. Okay, let me just pull that up. Maxine, maybe you can
Yes, yeah, of
help with
course.
this.
Yes, thank you, David. That's a really good question, Tyrone, about practical legal training. Your approach would be the usual way that you would approach securing a practical experience placement. So we do advertise through our Careers Hub PLT placements, and then you would need to look into that placement to see if they have a focus on technology. Of course, more and more firms and corporations and community legal centres where you would do your practical experience are taking tech on. They're needing to understand technology, apply technology. The courts now, the use of technology, and of course that was accelerated by COVID. But courts that are doing, firms that are doing litigation would be engaging with technology in the way that they conduct the matter, they relate to the court, etc. So what I think is important, though, if you are doing the major or about to undertake the major and you're looking for your practical experience placement, it would be a good indication to potential employers of your placement that you are interested in tech. And then usually, the two of them will meet up. So have a look at our Career Hub for places that are advertised. Have a look yourself when you're securing placements. As I said, a couple of community legal centres, obviously engaging with technology, taking our students. So it is Law Path that runs the internship, also takes our students for practical experience. So some of the internships will also offer practical experience. So it is really a matter of doing your research, identifying organisations and firms that are really using tech, and then that also helps you when you're looking for grad positions. So as law students, you probably know that there are some firms that will, as part of their marketing about what sets them apart as a law firm, is the fact that they have a very sophisticated use of technology within the firm. Now, of course, as I said, law firms are having to engage with technology, but there are certainly firms, and Ethan at Gilbert and Tobin is one of those. So you might want to try and plan both your practical experience as part of your practical legal training and any further employment, whether as an employed solicitor or as a graduate or as a clerk, firms that do have that strength and that focus. Thanks, David.
Okay. Thank you all for your attendance. And thanks to both Genevieve, my colleagues, Genevieve and Maxine. We look forward to seeing you in some of these subjects in the future. And again, if you've got any questions, we're more than happy to help out with them. So thank you all. And we hope that this information session has been useful for you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. You will receive a post-event email soon, and that will include a recording of the webinar. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.